The NBA trade deadline is exactly 1 week from today. February 6th is the final day for teams around the league to make deals, and the Cavs are certainly in the market to either make a deal to improve the team or make a deal to get under the luxury tax so they don't start the repeat offender clock a year early when they're ever so slightly just under $2 million over the cap right now. The trades we're about to break down here, you saw on UCSS earlier, but it's not just the UCSS folk that should have a chance to dissect, have fun with, laugh about, rip apart, or enjoy some of these fake trades. So right now it is Tuesday night, 7 o'clock on the dot, if you can see my watch. And I got Luka from RealCavsFans.com, Tony Pesta from Fear the Sword, and Mack Perry from the ItsCavalier Pod joining me tonight to break down some of these hypothetical trades for the Cavs. We'll tell you which ones we like, which ones we don't like, and maybe there's somewhere in the middle that we can land to find out what the best path forward for the Cavaliers is at the NBA trade deadline. If you don't follow Luka, Tony, and Mac already, I highly recommend it. And with that, enjoy this Cavs hypothetical trade scenario for the 2024-2025 NBA trade deadline. All right, guys, joined now by Luka from Real Cavs Fans, Mack Perry from the ItsCavalier Pod, and Tony Pesta from Fear the Sword. These are my Knights of the Cavs table here to help us break down some hypothetical Cavs trades 1 week out from the deadline. I told these guys beforehand, but I want to tell the audience as well. Mack is the ultimate optimist. Luka is typically the realist and the wet blanket when I throw in hypothetical trades via text. So I have those two to balance each other out. And Tony's my wild card. I honestly have no idea which way Tony's going to fall on some of these. So we have a good balance. And with that, let's just dive right into it, guys. The biggest name on the block that has been circling the Cavs Twitter sphere and all conversation is Cam Johnson. If the Cavs are going to make a straight up 1-for-1 deal with Cam Johnson, I think the framework of the deal looks something like this. LeVert, Wade, Tyson, and Tristan Thompson plus a pick go to Brooklyn. In return, the Cavaliers would get Cam Johnson and Day'Ron Sharpe, the big, to help bring it back. All these trades work financially via the Spotrac trade machine, and Luke is here to tell us why down the road it may not be as financially feasible. But guys, and we'll start with Tony, the wild card here. If this is the deal that would land the Cavs, Cam Johnson, and another big, does this make sense? Too much to give up, or does this not interest you whatsoever?
Here's the thing. Cam Johnson, he interests me a whole lot. I'm on record saying that I think this is the, quote, all-in move that the Cavs should make. But I see you included my man Dean Wade there. And if that's the asking price, losing LeVert, Wade, Tyson, Thompson, those are a different discussion. But losing Wade in that deal might be a deal breaker for me. I know you get Sharpe and a backup big included there as well, so it's a little more enticing. But I don't know. That's a deal that I personally probably wouldn't pull the trigger on. If Koby does it, I'll be able to talk myself into it. But that's one of those hypothetical deals where I grimace a little bit, because now you're putting a lot of that really is like an all-in move on Cam Johnson now, because you're limiting yourself moving forward. You're losing, probably your second best perimeter defender. You could say Evan Mobley's number one. Maybe it's Dean Wade. Maybe it's Okoro. But Dean Wade's very important to what they do on both ends of the floor. Giving him up, plus Karis LeVert, plus you're losing a young guy. Tristan, again, I mean, it is what it is. But it's a lot to give up. That being said, Cam Johnson fits perfectly on this team. So I'll go with, personally, I'd probably pass. But if Koby did it, I wouldn't be too upset. I can see the reasoning.
Yes or no, Tony, if you flip Dean Wade and Niang, is that an instant yes if that's the case?
That's an instant yes for me. Yeah. All due respect to Niang, I value Dean Wade a little more.
Mac, in this instance, if you were Koby Altman and this was the offer and the package required to get Cam Johnson and Day'Ron Sharpe, would you do it?
You know what? People are going to be pissed off at me for saying this, but I have to. Look, Dean Wade has missed time consistently again and again. I appreciate everything that this dude brings to the table, but he's never played more than 63 games in a season. He's consistently unavailable when it matters the most down the stretch of the season. So I can see a world in which this makes sense. You get that big wing, you get a backup big. If you're the Cavaliers, you're Koby Altman, you feel this is your window, and there's an argument to be made that it is, I think you pulled the trigger on it because LeVert is on it expiring right now. There's no guarantee that he'll be back. He also has some lingering injury issues himself. Tristan Thompson, love him. Part of the championship team, always going to be a part of my heart. But it doesn't mean a lot to give him up. And Jalen Tyson, that's probably to me the one that would hurt the most just because of the developmental potential that he has. But yeah, if I'm Koby Altman, I probably pull the trigger on this deal because I just don't know if I can trust Dean Wade down the stretch. And frankly, with what's going on with LeVert's contractual obligations next season, I think you got to do it.
Luka?
I will give Matt credit. I think Dean Wade is consistent, just consistently unavailable. I think that's part of the problem. And I'll give the deal breaker in my perspective is the 2031 draft pick. To me, that's the biggest risk. I love the 2031 draft class. I'm joking. But to give up a pick that far in advance for a small market team that doesn't have anyone on the books, that is the biggest deal breaker. It's not saying don't go all in. It's just that can be so crippling for a franchise that relies on drafted talent. Look at Garland. Look at Mobley. Look at what you had to give up to get Mitchell. All that was draft assets. You give up that for Cam Johnson, not saying he's not worth it. That's just the biggest risk. Within that, I will say if you are getting multiple young players like a Sharp and a Cam Johnson, that makes it more attractive to give up. But also understanding if you're giving up that 2031 first, that means you can't trade your next first until 2033, which is 2 more years down the road. So that is a cascading impact. And you have to understand, is that really worth it? Understanding where you're at now and what that means moving forward. The one thing I do like about this potential scenario is that it does potentially get them under the luxury tax. So they save about 1.7 million, depending on who you read, 1.6 to 1.9. So if it does get them under the tax, it is additional benefit that I think makes this more attractive. So I'm kind of in the middle. I think I'm with Tony. Like if Kobe did this, I can understand, but ultimately I think it's a little bit too much to give up given it's Wade, Tyson, and a 2031 first thing. If you want to bring Johnson in, it's adding to that, not taking away all of your perimeter defenders. And the last thing I'll say about Johnson is we had tweeted this out. Games played last 5 years, 261 games. Dean Wade, 247. So if you're complaining about Dean Wade's availability, I think you have reason to believe that Cam is in the same arena. He's also injured. He's injured for another week, probably not as long as Wade, but I think that also goes into, do you want to give up that much for a guy who there's still availability questions as well?
All fair. We'll see what happens. This next deal, actually, Luka, you sent me this one, so I'll let you start on this. But this is a 3-team deal that involves Cam Johnson. But in this instance, Cam Johnson does not go to the Cavaliers. Cam Johnson ends up on the Pacers. As part of the 3-team deal, the Cavs get Obi Toppin in return to help solidify that big wing position. The Nets in this instance get Karis LeVert, Jarris Walker, who was a lottery pick by the Pacers a few years ago, Isaiah Jackson just to make the money work, a first from Indiana, and some seconds here from Cleveland. So, not Tony, Luka, you kind of proposed this deal to me at first. It lands the Cavs Obi Toppin and gets them under the luxury tax. I feel like this is more up your alley.
The more complicated, the better, right? So I think it's going to be hard for the Cavs to make a direct move of significance. I think just with the assets, where they're at financially, trying to find a one-to-one match motivation-wise is going to be hard. So I think if you're going to see a larger deal, if they could potentially attach on and take advantage of maybe that third player who may not be wanted or need to find another place for that may not be as much value to the second team, I think that's where they can be a little bit more opportunistic, and that's where their assets may go a little bit farther. So ultimately, if they can find a deal, with maybe the De'Aaron Fox stuff, the Cam Johnson stuff, even if you don't get Cam Johnson, if you can benefit in a way, you're still benefiting. So, with this scenario, it's trying to find another piece that can work. Obi Toppin, someone who could be moved or likely would be moving to Cam Johnson deal if he goes to the Pacers, just making things work salary-wise. I know I tweeted at Tony earlier about, D-Wade insurance. Does that really mean a wing insurance? Or does it really mean big insurance? To me, I think you have enough on the wing to make things passable. When it gets down to playoff rotations, I'm more scared about what that means behind Frobley than I am on the wings. So I think anything you can do that locks in a third big long-term like it does Toppin, it's going to be attractive. So personally, I would do the deal, but I also propose it, so I'm biased.
Tony?
Stylistically, it makes a lot of sense to get that back up big, and it is a smaller scale move. So you're not as worried about, giving up too many assets. It looks like it's just Karis LeVert and the first round pick there. So I see the vision here. The thing is, I wouldn't be upset if the Cavs did this. I still personally am leaning towards, I won't say Cam Johnson or bust, especially with the recent Dean Wade news and just knowing how that goes. I'm much more open to making just any sort of move to get either a backup big or a backup wing, just another depth piece on this roster, because who knows if you'll be able to rely on Dean Wade come playoff time. So a move like this a week ago, I would have said no, just go get Cam Johnson. Now I'm a little more interested because, again, you need somebody who's athletic, who can move their feet a little bit. Obi Toppin's not the best defender, but he's got some size. Again, and even like rebounding, he's athletic. He's never been the best rebounder, but he's a little more helpful than Karis LeVert. And right now, the Cavs, they're in the back half of the league in offensive rebounding percentage. They're allowing their opponents to grab too many offensive rebounds. It's an issue that they've had for a while, and a big reason for it is, yeah, you have the two bigs, but then you have two guards. And Max Strus doing his best wing impression, or Karis LeVert or Coro, whoever, you get Obi Toppin. All right, that's a legit backup big who can rebound a little bit. So, and he's a bit of a floor spacer. So I see the vision here. I wouldn't be upset at all if that's a move the Cavs made, but I still have my eyes set on Cam Johnson because I think he is the one guy who is available who could legitimately move the needle if you manage to get him without giving up Dean Wade, because neither one of them is too available all the time. But I feel like if you have both of them, hopefully you'll be able to get something there.
Mac?
I pulled the trigger on this. Love Karis LeVert. Look, Ty Jerome, to me, has made Karis LeVert's role a little bit more expendable, right? I think you can get away with playing Ty Jerome in a lot of those minutes. And now that you have Max Strus back in the fold, I think that you can make do. The Cavaliers could certainly use the assistance at backup 4-5. And Obi Toppin is positionally versatile enough to play anywhere between 3 through 5. 5, he played 16% of his minutes there already this year. He can space the floor. He can space the floor, as Tony mentioned. He's a quality rebounder. I think that with Karis being on and expiring, if you were looking to make a deal to get under the tax threshold, I think this would make a lot of sense because, one, you fill a role that you absolutely need in that backup 4-5 behind Frobley, and you figure out what you're doing with Karis LeVert. You don't have to worry about re-signing him. So I pulled the trigger on this deal.
All right, there's one more Cam Johnson 3-teamer here. Mac, I'll let you start. We'll go quickly on this one because it's in the same vein. In this instance, Cam Johnson's heading to the Detroit Pistons. The Cavs get Duran Sharp, who we mentioned earlier, plus Simone Fontecchio from the Pistons in exchange for Okoro. Tim Hardaway goes from the Pistons, his expiring contract to the Nets, and a couple of picks. The Cavs in this instance essentially turn Okoro and second-round picks into Sharp and Fontecchio. It does not put them under the luxury tax. They're not a first apron team with this, but they are still over the luxury tax. Mac, this one entice you as much or not nearly so?
Why you got to hand me this one? Isaac Okoro is my guy.
Listen, the next one's right up your alley. I promise you, Mac. The next one you're gonna love. I promise.
I probably pull the trigger on this because of Duran Sharp. I do like Simon Fontecchio. I think he brings some quality things to the table, but I would hate to lose Isaac. It's just the problem with Isaac is that he goes on these stretches in which he consistently looks like he's making improvement, and then he's unavailable, similar to what we have seen from Dean Wade. So I lean that I would probably make this deal because I don't even know what Isaac Okoro's playoff what he's going to look like in the playoffs from a rotational standpoint. So I think I would go ahead and pull the trigger on this one just because I think the Cavaliers need that backup 4-5.
Real quick, Tony, you pulling the trigger on this one or no?
I'm gonna have to be the one person standing on Okoro Island today, I guess, because I'm gonna have to say no to this one. I gotta keep my boy Okoro, and it's only because yes, you need a backup big. Sharp helps there. Fontecchio, I feel like the idea of him is better than the results. He had a really hot end of the season last year, but I'm looking at it now. He's on Detroit, a team who really needs some extra spacing. He's only playing about 17 minutes per game, and he's shooting 34% from the three-point line. So, honestly, I think Okoro is a much better shooter than him, and he doesn't have as much of a versatile offensive game, but a better defender. Doesn't have the size. I'll give him that. Fontecchio's 6'8", so he's a legit wing. But I'm probably just sticking to it with Okoro there. And again, like I said with the last deal, this is a decent move on the margins. But at this point, if we're involved in a 3-team trade with Cam Johnson and we're not the team ending up with Cam Johnson, I'm a little disappointed.
Luka, real quick, your thoughts on this 3-team deal?
So you called my deal last time disappointing because you didn't end up with Cam Johnson? Is that what I'm hearing?
A mild disappointment. It was better than this one, I would say, though.
Okay, fair enough. This is a great philosophical scenario. Is this enough of an upgrade to stay in the luxury tax 4? And I think that's what Kobe's going to be asking himself a lot throughout this trade season. I think is going to vary from person to person because of the value assigned to certain players. Don't think you're wrong in any scenario, but to me, I would be tempted to do it because you get two controllable, potentially younger players who fill needs long term. So it is beneficial to stay in the tax, but I can also understand that it's probably not enough of an upgrade to stay in the tax and start that repeater clock. So I think when fans see these scenarios, say, oh, yeah, it's 100% done deal talent-wise. Well, is it really worth it, though? Like, I think it's just enough where it may not be, even though it's a talent upgrade, you're getting a financial downgrade and long term that may not be worth that small shift here this year.
All right, this next deal, I'm calling the Mack deal. Mack, this deal was made for you. Are you ready?
Let's see what you got, man.
3-team deal: Nets, Lakers, and the Blazers. In this instance, the Cavs, as part of a 3-team deal, get Rui Hachimura and your guy Duop Reith, Mac. After Anthony Davis said he wants to play with the real center, he's sick of playing the 5. The Lakers get George Niang and Robert Williams from the Blazers. The Blazers, in this instance, get Okoro Hood-Schifino, who's a lottery ticket. Who really knows what he can do? In Christian Wood, simply for salary plus a second-round pick from the Lakers in this instance. But Mac, if the Cavs can turn Niang, Okoro, and a pick into Rory and Duop Reith, I feel like that's right up your alley.
It is right up my alley. Sorry to tell you this, Tony, but I've been rescued from a Coral Island. If this is the deal presented, if it nets you Rui and Duop, two guys I think could absolutely plug and play for this Cavaliers team, I think you have to do it if the cost is just Niang, Okoro, and a pick. I think you kind of got to do it because there's just too much potential here.
Tony?
Yeah, look, Mac has rejoined society. He's left the Coral Island. I might have to join him on this deal. I'm not going to lie. When I first saw it, I was thinking, no, I don't think I want Rui and Reith. But if it's only Okoro Niang and you're gaining two guys who, I think Reith he's not that great.
He's showing the floor spacing. That's the thing to me with Duop is the floor spacing out there. You can play him in specific lineups that, you can play him alongside Jared Allen or Evan Mobley if you can really get that floor spacing out of him, probably more so with Evan Mobley. But I think that the floor spacing ability that he has, he's a decent rebounder and he's got some size to him. I think that, to me, people have been screaming for that out of George Niang, the rebounding alone.
Yeah, and that's the one thing that kind of nails this deal for me is that both Rui and Duop are good rebounders. Rui even better than Okoro, where I guess the one holdup here for me is, are you punting on the potential for Okoro to be basically a better version of Rui? It's a little bit different of an archetype, but if Okoro ever does become a plus rebounder with the added shooting, with the defense that he plays, you're kind of better off with him than Rui, in my opinion. But Rui already is that rebounder. He's much more physical. He's a bit bigger. And you get a backup big, someone who's certainly more playable than some of the backup bigs we currently have, Tristan Thompson. And Niang's a good player, but he's been rough out there, especially when the 3-point shot isn't falling. At least Reith can give you, legitimate size and rebounding. So I think I would do this deal. Yeah.
Luka, this one we kind of collabed on coming up with. So please don't tell me now you hate it after loving it the other day.
No, I just asked Mac to plug his ears because how long are we going to wait for Okoro to give us that rebounding and other ancillary things that we've been waiting on? Amen Thompson just dominated the Cavs doing all those things we've been asking Okoro to do. The rebounding, assists, it's all been consistently flat for 5 years. Understanding it's still young, not discounting that, but all those things we've been asking for, and he's developed his shot. 100% game changer with respect to that. But all those ways he can still contribute, he hasn't, and I'm just a little bit skeptical of that. So when it comes to that, I definitely think reallocating some of the wing assets to other needs is attractive, and that's why I do this deal. Additionally, I mentioned two other things. One, I think with Niang, he's going to have a really limited market. So when people plug him into deals or people expect him to be traded, if you don't want him, why would somebody else want him? His contract and his play and his skill set, only a few select teams are going to want, and if anything, it's going to be a negative for them to trade because he has money owed after this year. It's not a terrible contract, but it's enough where a team Unless they're competing now and see value in him, they're likely not going to want him. As a side shoe to this, I know Matt can get behind this. So, yes, open your ears now. Bring the Great Barrier Reef to Cleveland. We need him. Small deal like a Merrill and Thompson that gets him under the tax, gets him a big, has a controllable center next year. So he has a deal into next year. That's really attractive part of that. For 2 million he's making, you're not going to find better than what he brings. So I do it, even if it's a side shoot deal. It's one of my favorite, personal deals. I think if you can do that, it makes a whole lot of sense.
Look, Mikey, real quick, I just want to say this to Luke. I understand the discourse with Isaac Okoro. I think we all understand that he could potentially develop more, but right now the Cavaliers have a window, and you have to be, if you're Koby Altman, you have to be realistic with yourself about, hey, if we have that window, can we afford to wait on guys to develop to what we think they could be? Yeah. So that's where I am at with Okoro. I'm still a huge believer, but if you got a deal like that on the table, you got to do it.
No, it's a fair point, and we were talking before we actually started recording. The Cavs are going to be a second apron luxury tax team next year and the year after with the extensions kicking in. So if the Cavs are going to make a move to go in, it's a lot easier to do it now, even with limited assets, than it is next season or in 2026, 27, when they're locked into all the complications of the second apron. So it's a difficult situation for Koby Altman to be in. It's not an easy place to make some of these decisions. All right, this next deal I was really excited about. And I think it makes perfect sense in a vacuum for this season. Moving forward, I was reminded that when they're in the second apron, this may not be a great deal moving forward. But the Cavs have a serious need at a backup big. We just talked about Duop Reef and some other guys. Jonas Valanciunas makes almost identical money to Isaac Okoro. He's almost too good for the Wizards right now. And if you could bring him to Cleveland, on top of what he brings on the court, they still have to play the Cavs twice, and every time he plays against Darius or Donovan, he hurts one of them unintentionally. Not saying he's dirty, but that gives two less opportunities to take out one of the Cavs' backcourt. In this instance, Jonas does not have an expiring contract. He is another year after this, but is that enough of an upgrade at the 5 position, Luka, to mess up the future cap implications and lock you into essentially another big if all it would take is Okoro in 2 seconds? And by the way, I don't hate Okoro. They just don't have many contracts to trade. Like, it's the same couple guys in all these trades. It's nothing against Isaac. But in this instance, is it enough for Jonas, and would you pull the trigger on that, Luka?
I would not. And here's 3 reasons why. I think it gets back to the discussion that we were, Mac was mentioning before. OKC had this very similar hypothetical scenario, or I guess they pulled the trigger on, but philosophical scenario of, do you sacrifice young talent for more readily available talent? So going back to the Josh Giddey, Alex Caruso trade, they said yes. They said, we believe we're good enough now that a player who's kind of on the margins, who's actually doing really well in Chicago, may not help us and fit as well as a Caruso who's doing now later in his career. So I think that's that type of move here is, does this guy you're bringing in, even though you're giving up the potential, good enough? In my estimation, no. Sorry, Mike, plug your ears on this one. But I think one of the things they have to consider is, if you're going to acquire a guy of that salary, can he positionally play a lot of the different spots you need him to? And I think for a pure center moving forward, that 9 to 10 million is really hurtful. Even though he can space the floor, it's declined for the last 3 or 4 years, he's not going to be able to play with Mobley and Allen. So I think that right there, you can't have too many guys in that area and not be firm rotational players. If you want to get that same look, you can go with Reith, 2 million, a lot different, a lot cheaper, and you can reallocate those assets elsewhere to afford other people. So I think from the aspect of, if he could play another position, 100%, but since he can't, and it's really limited to the scenarios in which you can play him, and you're also, even if you want to play him with Mobley, that means Mobley's a full-time 4, and he's been better as a 5 statistically in his career. So I think you're even limiting what you can do with Mobley. So I would say no. The archetype fits with what you want out of that big, and just that positional versatility really hampers this deal.
Tony?
Yeah, I agree with everything right there. I'll say some positives about Valanciunas first, and why in a vacuum I can see the vision, because he's a great rebounder, great screen setter, which would help this team a lot. They don't have too many of those, but as Luka just said, very, very limited player. He is a traditional big. Jared Allen and Evan Mobley, part of the reason why you can get away with playing 2 bigs in the modern NBA is because they're both pretty versatile, and Jonas just isn't that. And he's had some floor spacing moments in his career, but not enough to where I'm willing to buy into it. And I kind of feel like this move would just be a dead end move. You're giving up a Okoro for a player who I don't think really moves the needle. The backup big position really is an insurance move to make sure that if Wade, or it's basically just Wade, if Wade's not able to play in the playoffs, you have to play Niang. And so in that position with Valanciunas, yes, if you could add him in a vacuum for nothing, sure, but I wouldn't give up a Okoro for him.
Mac?
That same airplane that picked me up off of Coral Island just crash landed back on a Coral Island. Okay, I got to draw the line.
The population on a Coral Island's back up to 3, just for the record.
I mean, yes,
it went to just me. Now we're all back.
The census just updated, and I got to call your bluff, Mikey. I think you do hate Isaac.
I like Isaac.
I'm just messing
he's a
with
good
you.
dude.
I just mess with you. Yeah, I agree with Luka and Tony. I think that the non-versatility of Valanciunas, and again, as Tony said, this guy is still a quality big, but he's a traditional big, and I just don't think you could get enough out of him in a playoff setting to warrant moving off of Okoro. I think that ideally you're going to want Evan and Jarrett playing the bulk of the big minutes, and as Tony said, again, this is more so of an insurance policy when you don't have when George Niang isn't playing well, when Dean Wade is injured or nobody else is available, and you don't trust the Tristan Thompson out there. I just don't think it would be worth giving up Isaac Okoro for.
All fair points.
I would say one thing I will add to that, if we have an analytical stat of how sharp Valanciunas' elbows were, that could sway me in the direction coming off the Şengün series. So if you can guarantee me
he's right there with
elbows.
Well, that was kind of my initial thought process. Like, he could be the enforcer the Cavs don't technically have right now, but the other points are all right. And like I said, in a vacuum, I think it makes sense, but long term, I don't think it fits. So I've actually talked myself out of this being a good deal for the Cavs. I have one more real deal, and then 2 more completely wild, unrealistic, will never happen. I just want to throw it at you guys for fun. But here's a new name we haven't mentioned from the Cavs' perspective in terms of being traded. We look at the wing position. We know they lack some size on the wing. How about a veteran for veteran swap here with the Spurs? Strus to San Antonio with a couple seconds in exchange for Harrison Barnes, who brings a little bit of championship experience, a little more size and rebounding, not as much shooting to the Cavs. Mac, I see you kind of wincing at this one. I know it'd be a tough pill to swallow to get rid of Max Strus, but Barnes brings a different profile from the wing. Do you like this idea? Hate this idea? Where you fall on this one?
I don't like it. I like Harrison Barnes. I used to be of the mindset that he would look good next to what the Cavaliers have constructed here, but I look at what Max Strus can offer you, and we just saw that in the last game. He is so versatile out there. The only problem that I have with Max Strus is that he's simply not as tall as I'd like him to be at that position. He has a good chemistry with the bigs. He can play off ball. He doesn't require a ton of touches. He has somebody out there that's always in motion, and he's on a pretty manageable deal, in my opinion. I would not give up Max Strus for a Harrison Barnes. I'm sorry.
Tony?
Yeah, look, Harrison Barnes, he helped us win 1 championship already in 2016. I don't know if he has another one in him. I don't know if he would help us there. And I'm such a Strus truther. As Mac said, look, his only flaw is being a little too short. If he was just a bit taller, and maybe
he's tall in our hearts.
Better. Yeah, exactly. He comes up big. Yesterday's game's a good example. Like, just to keep it simple, I think Strus is a better defender than Harrison Barnes at this stage in his career. I think he's a better shooter. He's a different type of shooter. He's a motion shooter, a little more volume. Barnes is more spot up. Again, Barnes, the archetype of who he is, fits this team perfectly, but I can't let go of Strus. I see the vision. I think Strus, he's not quite what you want at small forward, but I think he fits pretty good next to the core 4 because of the playmaking, because he's a decent defender. It's a bit overextended, again, at the wing, but he's a good defender. He's a good ball handler. He can catch fire like, very few players on this roster. So unfortunately, I'd have to say no. But thank you, Harrison Barnes, for 2016. You will always be remembered.
Luka?
I'm going to have to look into this dual citizenship between Coral Island and Strus Truther. I mean, how many passports are you carrying?
I'm on every island.
And don't forget Wade's World, too. He's got 3.
Yeah.
Fair enough. I can join you on that one. I would say no, and just more so from an age perspective. So, I think if they're a similar age, then you can sway me just because Barnes probably is able to scale up a little bit more, or you can play more of that 4. But in this scenario, I think you're losing that ability to play the 3. I think given in Barnes' advanced age of in his early 30s, which we can all relate to, he's probably not moving as well laterally as you would want. So if he was younger and he can move well better, I think I'd be more attracted because you're losing that age difference and that versatility that Strus provides. I just wouldn't give that up, especially if you're adding seconds to that as well. The Cavs have 8 seconds to move. Yes, they're like pennies, you can throw them away, but because they only have one first to move, those become so much more important when it comes to long-term sustainability. And the one other thing I'll add too, I think Harrison Barnes becomes a lot more interesting, something we talked about earlier in these three-way deals. So with the Aaron Fox news and San Antonio being his destination, does Harrison want to go back to Sacramento? That'd be quite the full circle moment. But that's the type of scenario where if Fox ends up going to San Antonio, do they still really want Barnes? Are they going in a different direction? Or could the Cavs hop on and latch onto a guy like Barnes and get him for a lesser value than, say, a Strus? So I think what's one of those things that now that the Fox market is open, that's really going to hold up some things until, same with the Butler thing, it's probably going to hold up a lot of these other deals as teams wait to see how they get involved, or do they really want to give up assets for players that may be unavailable or available depending on what happens.
I'd be more interested in this trade if it got the Cavs under the luxury tax. It does not. They are still in the luxury tax with that. It's essentially an even swap money-wise. So I would pass on that too. Okay, before I give you the next two, let me tell the audience listening, these are completely hypothetical. These would never happen. We are simply having fun because the Spotrac trade machine allows you to have fun, and it doesn't tell you this is too stupid. It just tells you if the money works or not. So, Tony, I'll let you start on this first one. You ready? Once again, this will never happen. These are stupid. We are just having fun here because we're four chill dudes talking about the Cavs on a Tuesday night. All right. The Cavs get Anthony Davis and Cam Reddish to answer the other guy who Mac tweets at all the time who wants Cam Reddish for Jared Allen, Strus, Dean Wade, Jalen Tyson, and every pick the Cavs can offer. Tony, what say you?
Listen, I thought we were going to be having fun here. As much as having Evan Mobley together, basically, with Anthony Davis joining, you just have two Evan Mobleys out there. That would be amazing. Cam Reddish is the player who Cavs fans have locked themselves into for some reason, as Mac has gone back and forth with people forever, it feels like. You're gutting your depth is the problem. You have zero depth. And, Anthony Davis, for as great as he is, I think Jared Allen gives you enough there to where you don't need to make this move. Again, we're just having fun. I get that, but I have to say no on this one. But Evan Mobley and Anthony Davis, when both are healthy and both at their peak defensively, that would be one hell of a team. So the idea of those two together would be a lot of fun. And the little bit of floor spacing that Anthony Davis has had throughout his career makes it even more interesting on offense. But yeah, unfortunately, I'd have to be all the way out on this because you'd have no bench at all.
Mac?
So far out on that deal. I know at least one person that would take that hands down. Not for Anthony Davis, for Cam Reddish. Steven, if you're watching the show, I know you would take that deal. But no, yes, that deal is for you. But no, that, as fun as it sounds, as Tony said, to see two basically Evan Mobleys out there, no, you absolutely cannot gut the depth to acquire Anthony Davis at this point in his career.
Luka?
If the aggregators are listening, Tony and Mac said they would not trade for Anthony Davis. You heard it here first. I would take it.
I would too.
I would go the complete opposite end. So we give Anthony Davis what he wants. He wants a big. What better big than Evan Mobley? But I think the reason why in this hypothetical, theoretical scenario is ultimately it's about the Jimmies and Joes, not the X's and O's. If you can have the best top-end talent, we've seen what the Knicks have done. We've seen what Celtics have done. That's all that matters at the end of the day. Now, I say this understanding that Jared Allen matched Anthony Davis head-for-head in their previous matchup, not discounting that. But in this theoretical scenario, that good of a player doesn't become available all too often. That's probably even light for him, but what he would go in the open market. So if we're just spitballing, you pair him with what they have now and it makes it even better.
Donovan, Darius, Evan, Anthony Davis, and Mikey McNuggets that starting five, bro. We ain't losing a game. Y'all 82-0. Y'all are crazy. Tony and Mac, I respect you guys for standing on business, but you guys are out your mind. This would never happen once again. But if that deal was offered to Koby Altman, I think he has to take it. Mac, I'll let you start with this last one. Once again, another completely stupid hypothetical. This would never happen. Just messing around with the trade machine. The Cavs have a lack of wings. We know that, right? We've talked about this the whole situation trying to find wings. Well, they don't grow on trees, and one team has a plethora of them. So I figured let's just get absolutely crazy. This will never happen. Once again, we are simply having fun. And I have to say that 20 times because there will be people in the comments who are like, that last trade. So we know it's stupid, okay? We're just having fun. So Mac, in this hypothetical world, would you trade Darius Garland and Karis LeVert to the Rockets for Tari Eason, Jayshawn Tate, Fred VanVleet, and 2 unprotected firsts from the Rockets?
Hell no. Look, I'm an Ohio man through and through. I'll always be a fan of Jayshawn Tate. Tari Eason was a big time interest when he was coming out. No, Fred VanVleet, that is not moving me enough to get rid of Darius Garland and Karis LeVert. If LeVert was included in a deal bringing in, one of those guys, and it didn't include Darius, yeah, you got my attention, but Darius is just too damn good to include in any deal like that. Nope.
Luka?
If you brought this to me this summer, I would have seriously considered it. I'm not going to lie. Just because of where Garland was at. But I was also at the saying, you can't get rid of Garland as lowest value. I once was on Eason Atoll. I still hold stock on Eason Atoll. Love him. To what Max said, that draft lottery when he was available, that was a heartbreaker to see him be passed and knowing what they need and seeing what he's become now. Not often you get two Columbus, Ohio players being traded for one another with Tate and LeVert. So shout out for that if that ever happens. But ultimately, going back to the Anthony Davis thing, you will go for the best players. Garland's the best player. I think VanVleet fits what they would need. But I think giving up that top-end talent and what Darius can be, seeing how Donovan's knee's been going, I don't know what you want to get rid of that. And that's that creation to that Garland gives that VanVleet really isn't there as much as Garland is. So I would say no.
Tony, 3 for 3 here?
Yeah, I got to say no. Listen, I would feel personally insulted if they traded Garland for VanVleet, just because on principle, I can't give up one of my favorite players in the NBA for one of my least favorite. On principle, I already have to reject this deal.
Stand on business. There we go.
And then as exciting as those wings are in the Cavs, Lord knows they need some athleticism and they need some wings. They're not moving me enough to give up you could argue the heart and soul of this team, the engine of the offense. As great as Donovan Mitchell is, and he's still the best player on the Cavs, in my opinion, Darius Garland is too important. And yes, VanVleet fits some of what you would need in return there, but I just don't think he gives you what DG gives you. And those wings just don't do it for me. Now, if you want to give me Thompson, which would never happen in a million years, but I would sign up for that. Sorry, Darius, I love you, but I'll see you later.
Yeah, that's where
this deal,
that'd be good.
Yeah, I can't. I can't do it for Tari Eason. I'm sorry.
We'll make it a clean sweep. I would not. Those unprotected picks, especially the one from Brooklyn, is intriguing, but it doesn't fit the Cavs' current timeline. And if you're going to make that move for the future, then Donovan is not necessarily in line with when you're ready. So I also would say no to that, but I thought it was at least fun enough to throw it in there. Tony, Mac, Luka, I appreciate the time, guys. Real quick, we'll go on the horn. Tony, where can people find you online, on Twitter, your pod? Plug yourself. That was pause.
Yep.
Sorry. Tell people where they can find you.
You can find me just about anywhere at Tony_Pesta. I'm on YouTube. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Blue Sky. Do a lot of Cavs coverage, podcasts, videos, all that. And I'm on playback, writing for Fear the Sword and streaming for Fear the Sword. So if you want to watch Cavs games live, go to playback.tv/Fear the Sword. Links to everything are in the description. You find me on one place, you'll find me everywhere. So thank you for having me on. It was great to do this. It was a lot of fun.
Mac?
You can catch me in a Jerry 150. No, I'm just kidding. At ItsCavalier_pod on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and more. You can catch me going live after basically every game. It's exhausting, but it's fun. And thanks for having me on, man.
Awesome. Luka?
Why you put me after these guys? They're on every single social platform, and we're on Twitter, and we got a forum. So you can find us at Real Cavs Fans on Twitter, and you can go to the website. That's about it. I guess we got to get hip to all the other stuff going on these days.
I appreciate all three of them. If you don't follow them, I highly recommend each and every one of them. Incredible Cavs content and a bunch of different varieties too. So check them out. You saw these trades on UCSS. This is a little more of a real breakdown on what the Cavs can and can't do come deadline. 1 week from today, we'll find out if Koby makes a move. Luka, Mac, Tony, I appreciate you guys, and we'll see you tomorrow on the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. Peace.